Hello, party people. This is Brittany from College Greenlight, and you are here watching the College Block Party Summer 2020 edition. So we are up to our last presentation, and I think this is going to be a good one because if you all are anything like me, you love some money, and finding ways to afford college. And we are looking forward to our next presenters um, from the Hispanic Scholarship Foundation. They will be talking a little bit more about the Gates Scholarship. And we have Daniel and Deza and Jason Acosta to give you all an exciting, thrilling, insightful presentation about scholarships. And even if it's not thrilling or exciting, it's going to be informative. So hopefully you all have a pen and paper nearby and ready to take notes. And we have Paul Yoon, who will be also joining us. He will be in the Ask a Question feature there. So please don't hesitate to ask your questions, team. And then last but not least, please feel free to introduce yourself, you all. Use that live chat feature to the right. If you all have any questions, again, the Ask a Question tool below. We just wanted to make sure that you all know that there are no right or wrong questions, but please try to avoid asking questions about your GPA, test scores, or admissions chances, because our colleges really, and our speakers can't really provide you all with the best answer without seeing your full application. And if you all are curious about scholarships or admissions, go ahead, visit College Greenlight. We have a free tool, create your free account, and it takes about 3 minutes just to get started. And we'll instantly connect you to scholarships as well. And speaking of scholarships, you all joining us right now, you qualify for a chance to win our #1 fan scholarship worth $1,000. And all you have to do is take a selfie and tell us your favorite part of the online College Block Party. Follow us on Twitter or like us on Facebook, hashtag CBP Summer 2020 or hashtag CGreenlightFan. All right, team. So on with the show. I'm done talking. Let's go ahead and find some ways to make some money. All right. My team, Daniel and Jason, welcome to the block party. Have fun.
Thank you so much for having us. So my name is Jason Acosta. I serve as the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships with the Hispanic Scholarship Fund. My colleague Daniel Adeza will introduce himself shortly and be walking you through a lot of the content of this presentation. Thank you so much, Brittany, for the introduction. We're going to try to live up to all three. We're going to try to be fun, interesting, and informative. So that's going to be our task today. But at the end of the day, we do really want this to be informative for you, to help bring some light to the process of applying for scholarships. We are the Hispanic Scholarship Fund, and so I'm going to share a little bit about who we are as an organization, but we are very thrilled with this partnership with College Greenlight and the opportunity to share about scholarships as a whole. So we want to have a conversation about scholarships, not only the Hispanic Scholarship Fund, the Gates Scholarship, and other programs that we administer, but overall, in general, how you can be strategic about your process of considering and pursuing scholarships on your own. So that being said, we'll go ahead and get started. And I'll begin with the conversation about our mission as an organization. So our mission is to empower families with the knowledge and resources to successfully complete a higher education while providing scholarships and support services to as many exceptional students as possible. And I do want to bring an emphasis to a couple of components of our mission. First is that it begins with the family. We very much understand that the pursuit is involved with your parents, with your siblings, with many people within your support network and group that will help you pursue this dream and make that college dream a reality. So we're looking to support all of you in that pursuit. And we do that by way of a series of programs and initiatives that we'll talk about a little bit later. Also for us to successfully complete a higher education is a very intentional wording as well. For us to get into college is really just the beginning. And we want to support our students through their completion, not only their completion of a degree, but also graduating with a plan. And lastly, it's while providing scholarships. That's what this conversation is about. And so we've been around since 1975, and we're going to share a little bit more about our history as an organization, but we've been around for quite some time, and scholarships is what we do at our core. But there's also many more services we seek to provide to support as many exceptional students as possible. And that's the last thing I very much want to emphasize is that we have programs, initiatives, and we serve students from all backgrounds and ethnicity. And we do that very proudly. And so we're serving exceptional students across the spectrum. So we are the Hispanic Scholarship Fund. There are programs we have for those students who identify as Hispanic or Latino, but we also have other initiatives for all students, and we'll share more about that as well. So as I shared, the Hispanic Scholarship Fund as an organization has been around since 1975. And since that time, we've awarded more than $619 million in scholarships as an organization, just to provide a little bit of visibility into the scope of our work. We've had, and the need really, is we had over 115,000 applications in the last cycle. That is a lot of applications. It reflects a lot of need, but it also reflects a tremendous amount of students pursuing this college dream, and we're really excited by that. Through those applications, we were able to award just over 3,000 scholarships, which in sum was over $31.2 million awarded just in the last year alone. At the heart of our organization is the Hispanic Scholarship Fund General Scholarship. And so that's what we've provided since 1975. We continue to provide the majority of our scholarships through that general fund with specific criteria for that program, but that's not all we do. There's a lot more that we do as well. So through HSF Technologies, we have a website, we have a scholarship program, but we leverage that website and our technology to administer other scholarships as well. The premier, if you will, the largest tenant scholarship would be the Gates Scholarship. Through this initiative, we're able to recruit low-income African-American, Asian-American, American Indian Alaska Native, as well as Latino students from all across the country, low-income students, and support them with a last dollar scholarship program. You'll learn more specifically about that a little bit later. But in addition to that, we have the Wells Fargo Academic Leaders Fellowship Program, the Greater Cincinnati Scholarship, the Toyota West Dallas Scholarship, and we also are continuing to serve students who were selected through the Gates Millennium Scholar Program, which is a program that is not selecting new students, but still serving students all the way through the pursuit of their PhD. So there's a lot of Gates Millennium Scholars we're still supporting, and each year we're selecting new Gates Scholars as well as students through these other programs as well. In addition to those tenant scholarships, we have 22 endowed scholarships. These are very specific programs geared through a combination of criteria. So some of them are specific to a region, others are specific to members or affiliates of a particular group or organization or a school. These are historic. We've been doing these for a number of years. We don't have many new endowed scholarships, but there's still a lot of them that we do. What we wanted to provide here was visibility into the fact that even as one organization, as the Hispanic Scholarship Fund, there is so much opportunity and there's so many different things that we provide. And in addition to that, we hope that helps bring light to the fact that scholarship pursuits in general are very dynamic. There are so many different facets, not only to the organization, but to that pursuit. So really honing in on what your profile is as a student, what it is you're looking to do, what it is you're looking to pursue, and aligning yourself with those programs. Through the Hispanic Scholarship Fund alone, you may qualify for a number of different programs through HSF, and we would encourage you to pursue each that you qualify for. So that being said, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Daniel to introduce himself and lead us through the rest of the presentation.
Introduction to the HSF organization. And I just want to say I'm really excited to be here. So my name is Daniel Deza. I am the Senior Vice President of Scholarship Programs here at the Hispanic Scholarship Fund. And so generally speaking, my job is to ensure that the programmatic side of our scholarship programs is running smoothly. A little bit about myself. Prior to joining HSF, I actually was a college admissions officer. It is so far in my career my passion to work with students and increase college access, students of all backgrounds, to make sure that we have diverse populations going to college. And so I spent some time doing college admissions. And prior to that, actually, I spent a year teaching at the university. Really, really devoted to making sure and ensuring that students of all backgrounds are gaining access to institutions of higher learning. What I want to spend most of my time here is actually talking about the scholarship application process in general. So I labeled this section scholarship resources, but it's really, I want to give you tips and tools and advice for you to successfully apply to scholarships. And not only our programs, just programs in general. My goal is to empower you to go out there and find the resources you need in order to pay for your college education. And while I am always feeling very fortunate to support students, and hopefully I will be able to support you through one of our scholarship programs in the future, I also really want to promote this idea that you should be applying to scholarships across all organizations possible, both local, regional, national, even some international scholarships. And so really the goal here is to give you tools and tips that you can use for that. And so a few things I want to quickly cover is just financial aid refresher. So what is the scholarship and how does it fit in within the greater bucket of what is known as financial aid? A little bit about scholarships, and then of course resources. So this is very high level. For all of these different categories, I could spend hours talking about these different categories, but I do want to use this as a baseline. I don't want to assume that people know right off the top of their heads that what a scholarship is and what the difference is between a scholarship, a grant, student loans, etc. So I'll start with scholarships. These are things, this is money that does not need to be repaid. These can be offered either by institutions, so this would be the college you're attending, or outside organizations. And for these, it's important to note that you should never pay to do a scholarship search or to apply for a scholarship program. All scholarship programs should be free to apply to. And so if you are ever being asked to pay, let's say, $50 to submit your application, I would be careful. And so just want to make it clear that this should be a process that's free, both to search and to apply. Scholarships are similar to grants in that they do not need to be repaid, but they are slightly different. And so grants can be awarded based on financial need or academic achievements. Some are federally funded and others are state programs. Some institutions have private grant programs. These programs, actually scholarships and grants, I would say at the highest level, these are the types of things you should be going for. Both don't need to be repaid back. The ways in which you get them might be slightly different. Some people will call some things scholarships, some other people will call other things grants. There's a lot of interaction and overlap between these two different categories. And these are the two that you should be applying to. Grants, typically, you get most of your grant money will come from the federal government once you apply via the FAFSA for those for state and national level grants. Scholarships you usually apply through the institution, so the college you're attending, as well as outside organizations like HSF. Federal work study, once you submit the FAFSA, if you're eligible, you're able to essentially work on campus part-time or off campus. And then of course, student loans. So it's important to note that student loans must be repaid. Student loans aren't necessarily a bad thing if they are manageable and if they are being taken through your institution, through in most cases, ideally, loans that are backed by the government, so federally funded loans. That's because they tend to have the lowest interest rates out there and also have the most flexible plans in order for you to repay, and some are even subsidized. And so we won't talk a lot about that, but this is just generally speaking how scholarships fall into the bigger picture of financial aid. Highly encourage you to go to College Greenlight to learn more about different forms of financial aid, but just wanted to give that as a base. So scholarships 101. The scholarships can be one-time versus renewable. This is important because as you're planning, your 4 years in college, you will come to a point where you need to know how much money you have guaranteed coming in following years. So if you apply for a lot of scholarships, let's say your senior year of high school, and you get, let's say, $20,000 in scholarships, and that's what you need to pay for year one. If those scholarships are not necessarily guaranteed in year 2, 3, and 4, you need to reapply every single year, because otherwise you will have to take out $20,000 in loans for years 2, 20,000 for years 3, 20,000 for year 4. And so it's really important when you're doing a scholarship search, and once you obtain scholarships, to understand, is this a one-time scholarship or is this renewable? Outside versus school-based. So again, is this coming from an organization like HSF or your university? They could be merit versus need or both. So some scholarships you are eligible for simply because you have demonstrated financial need. Others, it's because you are an exceptional student, exceptional grades, exceptional extracurriculars, or a combination of both. These scholarships can either be payable to your institution or to you, which means that either your institution will be receiving the money or you yourself will be receiving a check. And so it's also important to understand because it does impact your budgeting. So is a $500 check going to be sent directly to you, or is it going to be sent to your institution? And if it's being sent to your institution, what does that mean? These, again, do not have to be paid back. But it's important to note that these may also have requirements around use, reporting, minimum GPA. And I say this because sometimes students will apply for a scholarship not knowing that they actually need to write an essay, once or twice during the academic year in which they receive the scholarship to provide updates to the donor or the funder. So just make sure you know what the requirements are for you to maintain that scholarship, also for you to report back to the particular organization that's granting that scholarship so that you can manage those things accordingly and get those things in line. How they work. So scholarships are essentially checks that are written for you to use on education related expenses, and be wise on how you spend it. The reason I actually wanted to include this slide, and a lot of people will say, well, yes, I know what a scholarship is, so why do I need to know how it works? Because this really is a slide about budgeting. So scholarships are meant to be used to pay for school expenses, that's tuition, books, food. Some have very strict guidelines, some are a little more loose, but they really should be going towards that. You shouldn't be using scholarship money to necessarily, treat yourself to a vacation to Europe. If it's a travel fellowship and that's what it's intended to use, perfectly fine. But if it's a scholarship meant to pay for tuition or books, you will find yourself short of money. It's a mistake that people make when they're first starting to budget. So really make sure that you understand, what is this money for? How should I really be thinking about how I should allocate this scholarship, and use that money wisely? Because if you're spending it and then still have bills to pay when it comes to your education, it just means you need to take out loans. So something to keep in mind. Where to search for scholarships. So here are a few organizations that we highly recommend that you go to. College Greenlight, of course, is there. And so definitely want to give a shout out and kudos to College Greenlight for having such a great search engine for you. But there are other options, and we encourage you to really just spend some time doing research. So here's I'll take a step back and say, here's what's key. Similar to what you've probably heard from the different admissions officers who have spoken to you in the previous sessions, it's important to understand the scholarship application process, similar to the college application process. This means that you need to do your research, figure out what are good fit scholarships for you. Because if you are able to come up with a strategy, if you're able to say, okay, these are the scholarships I'm most competitive for at the local level, regional, state level, national level, the time invested when you are applying to those scholarships is better, more well spent than if you're just applying ad hoc, because those are scholarships that you're competitive for. Those are scholarships that you most likely have a higher chance of receiving because you've done your research. And so this idea of finding a good fit scholarship or good fit college also applies to scholarships because all these scholarships have an intent. They all have sort of a reason for existing outside of monetary value. They're trying to support a certain type of student, or trying to support you monetarily, but also train you as a leader, or trying to train you as a community activist, whatever it may be. So make sure you're searching for good fit scholarships based on your academic performance, extracurricular accomplishments, and anything that makes you unique and special. And then also, just like your college application process, once you are searching, make sure you're keeping track of these, of all the scholarships that are interesting to you. You can, it could be rudimentary, like an Excel sheet. And when you find a scholarship, you jot it down, you jot down the link, and you jot down the due date and a few things about what are the requirements to apply. This is key because, as you know, your junior year and your senior year are going to be, or are, exceptionally busy if you're already a junior right now. And so your time is limited. You're balancing, obviously, schoolwork, you're balancing college applications, you're balancing your extracurricular activities, and I would place this as equally as important as those things, because you need to be able to fund your education. And so this is time consuming. And so you need to know which ones you're applying to, how much, what are the requirements for each, maybe even have an estimated time of completion. In other words, how long it's going to take to complete, how many teacher recs potentially are required, and then work backwards and say, okay, in the month of, let's say, September, there are 7 scholarships I need to apply to. So that's about a little bit under 2 each week. All right, each one of these requires 2 teacher recommendations. Okay, let me tell my teachers 2 months in advance, because they're also writing recommendations for my college applications and for other individuals' college applications. And then think about, okay, all these require an essay. So let me start working on these essays during the summer, because once I'm back in school, I know I won't have time. So it's critical for you to visit these sites, to start doing this search now, and to really start creating a calendar that fits in with your college applications, as well as any other responsibilities you may have, so you can plan accordingly, and make this a process that's enjoyable, a process where you have enough time to really present yourself in the most competitive way, and a process that, to be fair, this shouldn't be stressful. And a lot of it has to do with planning. So make sure you're going to these search engines and doing your due diligence. Applying for scholarships, I sort of touched on this before. It really is like the college application process. Look for opportunities in your community, in your district, in your school. Don't necessarily only aim for, actually thinking about colleges, your strategy should be diverse. And so similar to how you might have a REACH school, maybe 2 or 3 REACH schools, you of course should have maybe 2 to 3 REACH scholarships. But you shouldn't only be applying to the most competitive scholarship programs in the country. You really should be diversifying your portfolio of scholarships that you're applying to, that sort of balance the competitiveness also with, how competitive you are for those programs. And so what I mean by that, apply to a few scholarships where you think, wow, I think I have a really good shot. It's a scholarship for my community, for students in my high school who are engaged in this activity. Sounds very restrictive, sounds very specific, but a lot of scholarships are like this. So make sure you're applying to those, that you're not ignoring those, because $500 here, $1,000 here, $2,500 here can add up pretty quickly. And then, of course, also apply to scholarships that are somewhere maybe a level above that are regional, state level. And then, of course, I always encourage students to shoot for the moon and apply for the competitive national level scholarship programs, but don't put all your eggs in one basket. Make sure that you have, similar to your colleges, a diverse portfolio of scholarship programs that you're applying to. When you're applying to these programs, again, let your personality shine through. Make sure that who's coming through in these applications, similar to your college application, is you. A lot of these programs are trying to understand you as a person, you and your motivations. So it's important to, similar to your college essays and to questions that you may find on a college application, that you let your personality shine through and that you're authentic and genuine. Make sure that when you're applying to institutions, you understand what their policies are around scholarships. This is important, very important, because some college application processes have priority deadlines if you want to be considered for their institutional scholarships. And so simply submitting a college application a day past this deadline, even though you will be accepted or have a high likelihood of being accepted, means you potentially lost out on thousands, tens of thousands of dollars of support, just because of, you submitted at 7 a.m. the following day after their priority deadline. It sounds silly, but it is true. It's very important for you to look at those deadlines to the institutions you're applying to. And if they have priority deadlines for scholarships, I highly, highly, highly encourage you, pending any restrictions that you may have, to apply by those deadlines.
Daniel, one quick moment. I'm noticing Paul indicated that some of the students are interested in common aspects known in an applicant to win scholarships. So what are those qualities? And I think they have a great opportunity here with you having been involved in the selection process in many years. What are, if maybe in 60 seconds, right? What are those common like quick tips of who are those students that stand out and why?
So I will start with the broad answer, which is it really depends on the programs. And so similar to the colleges, each scholarship program is trying to find a specific type of student to support. They all have a mission, they all have a vision of the types of students they want to support. And so they're looking for students who are a good fit for those programs. It's not a good thing, it's not a bad thing, it's just who they've chosen to support. Now, specifically to the programs that we run that are sort of the national level programs, so this could be HSF or the Gates Scholarship or some of the other 10 and 10 endowment programs, we are really focused on students who exhibit a few characteristics. So I'll walk through them. So we're looking for students who have done exceptionally well in their respective high schools. So students who have taken advantage of the most rigorous curriculum available to them, students who are taking, are doing well in those classes, who are maximizing the extracurricular activities. We are looking for leaders in that respect. And so if you're a great student and you're really focused on your education and that's it, power to you. I applaud you. However, for our programs, we're really looking for students who are doing exceptionally well in school, but who are also doing exceptionally well outside of school. For us, it's also really important to hear what teachers are saying. So pick your recommenders well, because it matters a lot to us. It matters a lot to a lot of scholarship programs. It matters a lot to colleges. And in terms of characteristics, your essays, you may think we don't read your essays. We do. So different programs will have different ways by which they accomplish this. It could be, just an office. It could be volunteers, etc. But the essays are read. It's important for you to take those essays seriously. Be authentic, be genuine. I think sometimes there's sort of this narrative out there that you somehow need to be original in your essay, and so you need to be completely poetic. You need to capture your reader in the first 2 lines, otherwise you don't have a shot. I'll say this: I don't find that to be true in my experience. I worked in college admissions at a very competitive institution, obviously run very competitive scholarships. You don't need to be flashy at the beginning. It needs to be a good essay, but it doesn't need to be absolutely exceptionally original or flashy at the beginning. Write an essay that's true to you, that answers a prompt and showcases aspects of who you are, what you believe in, what you stand for, based on the prompt that's being requested of you. And probably the most important tip, and so this, you'll laugh, you'll think it's silly, apply. So many students just don't apply for these opportunities, and they're missed opportunities for those students. It sounds very silly, but I see a lot of students that were actively either sending information on this scholarship that I've had a conversation with, and I never see their application. They started it, never submitted. And we actually poll our students and ask them why they didn't submit. And one of the biggest responses is they ran out of time or forgot about the deadline. And so you can think about, some of these students could have potentially received our scholarship, and they didn't get it only because they didn't apply. So make sure you're planning well in advance and doing your work so that you can apply to every single scholarship you want to apply to.
Excellent.
Great question, Jay. All right, perfect transition, actually. So when to apply. This is a continual process, and I can't stress this enough because this is not, your scholarship search should not be something that you think about in January of your senior year. This should be something that you're thinking about when you're a junior in college, that because you're super busy, if you spend several months just doing research for scholarship programs and deadlines that are year round, that's okay. Spend that time, spend that 1 hour every week, spend those 2 hours every other weekend doing that research, and then creating a calendar for yourself a year out. I know it sounds tedious and maybe not how you want to spend 2 hours on a weekend, but hey, put on a Netflix show and then just have your laptop, have your phone, get this research done while you're doing, you potentially have your favorite TV show on in the background or like rerun of Friends. There's ways to get about this where it's a very stress-free, manageable process where you plan ahead and then are able to apply to all the scholarship opportunities you need to. It says here, start applying no later than 6 months before you need the funding. I would say start thinking about this no later than 2 years before you start college. And I mean that, just truly and honestly based on my experience working with students. I want to highlight, I'm cognizant of the time, a few national scholarship programs. So these are a few scholarship providers. This is not a holistic list. This is by no means the only scholarship organizations or programs you should be looking at, but just want to highlight here, the American Indian College Fund, APIA Scholars, the Brian Cameron Education Foundation, Coca-Cola Scholarship, Elk's Most Valuable Student Scholarship. These particular programs are competitive national level programs. They're in alphabetical order, so there's no judgment call here in terms of one being better than the other. But if you were to do your research, you'll notice that they obviously serve different constituencies, but also are looking for slightly different types of students. So make sure you're looking into these national level programs and understanding which ones are a good fit for you, and which ones do you think you're the most competitive to. Because if you only have time to apply to, let's say, 3 of these programs, which ones will they be and why? But just wanted to highlight here. I'll highlight one particular program, QuestBridge. They actually do a great job of actually creating a very strong pipeline for students to apply to some of the best schools in the country. I think some of the speakers today, if they have not mentioned, they're actually QuestBridge schools. So I highly encourage anyone on this call who is low income to actually visit or Google QuestBridge. Start searching through their website and start learning about that program. That's an exceptional program that not only helps students with their application process, but also then serves as a great funnel to some of the best institutions in the country. They work slightly differently than some of the other programs because they essentially say, hey, here's a great talented pool, and then the institutions themselves fund students, whereas the other programs here are actually us funding you. So slightly different means of funding, but nonetheless exceptional ways to get your college paid for. I want to spend the last few minutes talking about student and parent programs. So I'll use HSF as a base, but really my goal here is to really expose you to this idea of spending your summers, especially your summers after your sophomore year, your summers after your junior year, attending programs that are either enriching academically, enriching because of it's an extracurricular activity you want to pursue, maybe a leadership program, or enriching because they are college application boot camps that will really help you with the college application and scholarship application process. So I'll use HSF and our programs as home base, and then we'll sort of take a step back to talk about these programs as a whole. So we have a series of student and parent programs, you can see here, where we have a national reach. And so our Road to College, our College 101s, our college camps, these are events that take place across the country. We really try and rotate to different cities across the nation where we expose families. And for these programs, anyone's invited. We expose families to the tips and tools they need to successfully apply to their dream colleges, to prepare to apply for their dream colleges, which is key and important, as well as how to access and successfully apply to financial aid. But we also have programs that are a little more intensive. So an example there, the last one you see on the slide is the Youth Leadership Institute, where we actually, it's a 5-day overnight conference for outstanding Latino high school juniors. And so you actually are flown out to a campus the summer after your junior year, right before you start your senior year, where you get to network with students from all over the country and actually get to learn on a very intimate level the college application, scholarship application process. All these programs are free. Also want to introduce you to the Youth Leadership Consortium. You can see that College Greenlight there is a partner. And so this is a partnership where, similar to some of the programs we have for the Hispanic Scholarship Fund, we host programs called College Prep Saturday in different cities around the country to really educate. That's free. Attendance is, you sign up and you show up based on capacity. But we also have the Young Leader Summit, which is actually very similar to the Youth Leadership Institute. But this is open to students of all ethnic and racial backgrounds who identify as low income. And you can see that there's a whole consortium of scholarship organizations and organizations that work with students, just generally speaking, in higher ed access as well as higher ed success that are helping to bring these programs into fruition. So I want to quickly highlight these and actually highlight the fact that all these are free because when I was in high school, and I know a lot of students in high school, don't really know that these programs are out there and that you don't need to pay for a lot of these programs, especially if you're a low-income student. There are great programs that are hosted by organizations like ourselves or like us, like Hispanic Scholarship Fund and some of these other scholarship providers. But there's also programs at, schools like MIT. So I don't know if we can't do a show of hands, but there's this great program called Knights, where students who have exceptional talent in math, in physics, who are interested in engineering or just generally, computer science or science in general, can apply to a summer program completely paid for by MIT. And you go and spend a few weeks at MIT's campus. You work with professors. You work on a project. There are other programs similar to that all across the country that you can take advantage of. And so for anyone on this call who is a freshman, anyone on this call who's a sophomore, even juniors, I think there's still some programs available. Make sure you're searching for these types of college prep programs as well as educational enrichment programs. Even if a program has a fee, they usually have scholarships that are associated with those programs. And so if there's a program you're really interested in, and let's say it costs $6,000 to participate, I would not be embarrassed or ashamed and actually encourage you to pick up the phone if it's not readily available on their website and say, hey, I'm interested in this program. My family is not able to pay $6,000. Are there scholarships available to students, or is there funding available to students who don't have a high income? And the answer might be no, and you say, okay, thank you for your time, and you look for other programs to apply to, but the answer might be yes, and you have these great opportunities. There's fellowships. Did you know that there's fellowships for you to actually spend your summers abroad, completely paid for, sometimes by the federal government, for you to study a foreign language in a different country? So there's fellowships that actually allow you to leave this country and to travel and get to know other cultures, to learn new languages, and they're available to high school students. So make sure, please make sure you're taking advantage of these programs. Highly encourage you to visit our websites to learn about these programs in particular, but just generally speaking, want to encourage you to really think about the types of what you're doing over your summer and to actively be researching these types of activities and programs and events well in advance during your year. Again, 2 hours every weekend can really lead to some life-changing opportunities for you. And so with that, I think we want to open it to questions.
I see a question here in the chat from College Greenlight. It says, can you guys talk about how to organize scholarships you are interested in, or how to structure a scholarship list?
That's a great question. So I do have some thoughts on that. So I would say that your starting point should really just be noting or taking note of any scholarship that you are eligible for and that's of interest of you. So your home base is you're just doing research. You're seeing what is out there, and make sure you're taking detailed notes about when those scholarship deadlines are due, notes about what it takes to apply. I employed a strategy where I actually put the estimated amount of time to complete that application, which really helped me in terms of planning, sort of scheduling that within everything else I had to do during my senior year of college. So your starting point is just anything you see, put it on that list. Once you're at a point, which is typically the summer after your junior year, once you're at a point where it's like, okay, you really need to start thinking about your senior year and what that looks like, go to that list and start weeding out. Start strategizing and saying, okay, I am going to apply to 20% of the scholarships I'm going to apply to are competitive national level. 50% are going to be somewhere in the middle, maybe not the most competitive, but somewhere in the middle. And then the remainder will be local, institution specific. And you can actually play around with this, right? You can maybe tag scholarships in terms of how competitive you think they are, the level at which they are. Maybe even start saying, I think this one's sort of like a long shot. So maybe putting like reach, putting like competitive, putting very competitive, and then come up with the strategy that works with everything else you have going on. I, again, highly encourage you, similar to your college application process, to have a diversified portfolio of scholarships you're applying to. It's just critical. And then, we didn't talk about this here, but also think about, make sure you're submitting the FAFSA. That is your biggest source of access to federal funding, a lot of which for low-income students is grants. And then also make sure that when you're applying to colleges, you ask about what institutional scholarships they have available. and if there are any priority deadlines you should be aware of.
And then Daniel, I'm seeing some common questions as well as with regards to, is there a point where can you apply to too many scholarships? What is too many? And also more specifically, is there a point that it can impact sort of your financial aid award from your institution? So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so those are two great questions. So I'll start with the first. Can you apply to too many? Most people will say no. I actually say yes. If this process is actually eating into what you would consider a balanced life, a lifestyle that makes you happy, if you are giving up too much sleep, if this is too stressful, in combination with or in conjunction with everything else you have going on, cut down the number of scholarships you're thinking about applying to. Because the reality is maybe you are only able to apply to 20 because you're just so blocked. Maybe you're able to apply to 40. Maybe you're able to apply to 60. That number really depends on everything else you have going on. As that number changes, obviously your strategy, I think, needs to be more or less focused. If you're applying to 60, your strategy could be a little more loose. If you're applying to 20, it needs to be really hyper-focused on scholarships that you have a really good chance of getting, with a few reach ones, of course. But I would say that there is, and you'll know when that limit comes. You should be taking care of yourself, your physical health, your mental health, and also balancing everything else you need to do. So there is clearly a limit. I would say that if you're planning well, applying to 20 scholarships should be a fair goal. You should probably be applying to more. But that takes planning. That takes a lot of planning. So that's my opinion on that. Second question. This is a fantastic question. This is actually a question you should be asking your financial aid officers, both when you're thinking about applying to schools and also once you have been admitted to schools and are considering different institutions. Some schools have a policy whereby they will actually take whatever outside scholarship money you have and they will use it to replace any kind of institutional scholarship that they have already given you. This is known as displacement. And this is not a good or bad thing, it's just some schools will do this, it's just their financial aid policy. If a school has a displacement policy, make sure you talk to your financial aid officer to really understand what the impact will be. Let's say you get $10,000, $20,000 worth of scholarships, if that means it's a 1-for-1. So if the school was offering you $20,000 of institutional grants, and then you have $20,000 of outside aid, is it a situation where they're just going to take $1 of every outside aid from their institutional, and so essentially you're in the same place, or will they take a percentage of that? Some schools don't displace at all until you are above and over the cost of attendance. So an example would be, let's say a school costs $30,000. They're offering you $20,000 in their grants. You have $20,000 in outside scholarships. Because scholarships are meant to be used for education-related expenses, the school will say, okay, we don't want to take money away from you, but you don't need $20,000 from us. We only cost 30. So we're going to give you 10 and then use the 20 to essentially supplement the remainder of the cost. And so essentially you're going to college for free. And so some schools will implement that policy where their policy is to not necessarily take away from their grant money, but they will start doing that once you have more money than you need, because you just don't need it at that point. So really, it's a great question. That's a question you need to ask your financial aid officers, both when you're applying as well as once you're selecting and choosing between different institutions.
That's excellent. Thank you, Daniel. And the one thing I would emphasize there is no one formula for scholarships or even for financial aid policies. Each institution has their own approach. And even as a scholarship organization, as the administrators of 28 different scholarship programs, the interesting thing about us even is that those deadlines are varied. There isn't one single deadline for all 28 programs that we administer. They have different deadlines. And so when you're planning, you really have to pay attention to those deadlines, even within multiple programs from a single organization. And you need to have those conversations with the institutions you're applying to, the ones you're considering. These have to be rolling conversations. There is no one size fits all, no one formula, no one single policy with regards to scholarships and financial aid. And so having those conversations and getting ahead of it with those plans and being willing to ask those questions, to make that phone call, and to get those answers that you need is really critical in this process. Excellent. And then I didn't know, Brittany, if we had a queue on any specific questions that folks might want to, that you might want us to focus on now as well. So I see a question here that Paul is triggering us on, Daniel, and it says, is it better to focus on bigger scholarships compared to micro scholarships?
Oh, great question. I would say focus on both. Now, the percentage of time you focus on each, I think really depends. And I say this because those micro scholarships usually tend to be more regional, more local. And so therefore you are a much more competitive applicant for those because they're looking to support students from either your high school, from your school district. And so you just have a better chance than potentially national ones. If all you're doing is applying to micro scholarships, chances are that you might be missing out on a great opportunity by not applying to the national level scholarships, because the national level scholarships tend to offer a lot more in aid, but they again are more competitive. So it goes back to that balance I was talking about earlier. It's really about having a diverse portfolio. I don't think it's better or worse to employ one strategy over the other. I would say employ a balanced strategy that has both elements of it and plan accordingly so that you can maximize all scholarships across the entire spectrum as much as possible. It's really about planning and putting in the time and spacing things out.
Hey team, we had a couple of questions from the audience about how do you all define first generation students.
Mm-hmm.
Can we take some time out to explain that to our audience?
Yes, and so I'll start with high level because I think that's a great question. So different institutions and different organizations will define first generation differently. So I'll start with the definitions I've heard and then share our definition. So different definitions I've heard. It's neither parent has graduated or has any kind of college level degree. So that could be an associate's, a bachelor's, or higher. I've heard neither parent has a college level degree from the US. So they might include someone who, let's say, received a bachelor's degree in a different country, but because it's not from the US, they consider that student first generation. I've heard that first generation includes students whose parents don't have a bachelor's degree or higher. So if one of your parents or both parents have an associate's degree, you would still be considered first generation by that school or by that organization because they're really thinking about the 4-year plan, right? The 4-year bachelor's degree. And so therefore you're considered first generation for that program. Those are the 3 big buckets I've heard. The definition we employ is actually the last one, where you are considered first generation if neither parent has a 4-year degree. So if either one or both of your parents has an associate's, you would still be considered first generation by our definition. But that definition does vary by institution. So, one college, actually 2 colleges in the same city might actually have a slightly different definition for first generation. But those are the big 3 that I tend to hear most organizations employ.
And team, just right before your presentation, Princeton spoke a lot about how to share your narrative. And we give our students a lot of advice on college essays. But what advice would you give students for their scholarship essays, and particularly during the reading? How do you all distinguish one candidate from the next?
I'll speak to kind of a good approach, Daniel, building off of what you shared earlier, and then I'll allow you to do the part about what do the readers consider. What I suggest is really considering the profiles that the reader is viewing, right? So when you're going through the admissions process, these are humans on the other side who are reading essays, and they're reading essay after essay. And you can only imagine a place like Princeton receiving essays from students who are all, many of them are valedictorians, many of them are captains of their teams, many of them have these sort of titles and positions. Every institution, every school that has a sport has a captain of the team. Every school has a valedictorian, right? So when you think about those qualities that you might have, those may be things that are important to you, and that's great, and if that's what you want to speak to. But remember that those are sort of qualities that reflect elsewhere in your essay. So when you're thinking about setting yourself apart, think about what you as a person individually. So you don't want your essay to effectively read as your resume, right? You don't want to say, my name is Jason, I'm from this city, I was a leader in this group, and I did really well in school. You can imagine if that's what your essay consisted of, then it wouldn't necessarily stand out from every other student, right? So you don't want to necessarily blend in. You want to make it personal about what drives you as an individual. Maybe there was a leadership opportunity you took advantage of that really motivated you, that you made a difference in, and why did you make that difference? What pushed you? And what are those qualities that drive you as an individual? What are you most passionate about and why? Versus listing what it is that you may have done. So really digging into you as a person, digging into you as an individual with your own set of passions and your own, what they refer to as your narrative, right? What is it that drives you? What is it that makes you tick? And how is it that you've succeeded or turned that into success? And success is defined by you, right? What does that mean for you? And being able to articulate that is typically what I like to share with folks.
Great response, Jason. I completely agree with everything you've said, and sort of the next level. And here's where it gets interesting. So Jason's advice is fantastic. And then there's always that second layer that comes down to, as Jason said, that there's people on the other side. And so then that second layer is, it's actually very subjective. And so you've probably heard a lot of different tips and advice on that second layer, right? Some people will say, oh, you should approach your essays like this, make sure that some people say you should be very genuine. Some people would say, like, don't talk at all about extracurriculars. Others say talking about extracurriculars is fine. It's just your approach. I find that second layer is really informed, really is trying to get at different institutions, different programs are looking for different things. And so that second layer is actually subjective based on what that organization, what that institution is looking for. So I think Jason's advice is great. And essentially he was saying this shouldn't be a resume. This is really a platform for you to share about your worldview, what makes you tick, what excites you, what makes you unique, and because you are. What makes you an individual, and what do you want to share? What do you want to share with the reader about yourself? And then everything else, you at some point you have to say, this is who I am. I'm answering the prompt. I'm showcasing a side of me that is true to me, that's unique. I'm presenting it in a way that is true to my writing style. I've had a few people look at it, and so I know that, there are no grammar mistakes, that this is expressed clearly. That's all you can do. And that is the best thing you could do. Everything else, it's up to the institution. And it's very interesting. When I used to work in college admissions, sometimes I would get the question, which is a very interesting question. If the same candidate applies in year 1, and the same candidate applies in year 2, and the same candidate applies in year 3, will they always get the same admissions decision? And the answer is no, because every year, what a particular scholarship program, with a particular institution is slightly different. Doesn't necessarily mean it's completely different. And obviously there's standardization and guidelines within the selection process. Please don't take this as saying, wow, it's just all completely random. It's not. But every single year, what makes a class rich, both in terms of a scholarship cohort or an institution, is slightly different because there's different applicants. And so what will make you stand out in 1 year may not make you stand out as much in year 2. And it's nothing personal. It's just about who else applied. And that's something that, an admissions officer can't predict. And so while 1 year, talking about a certain subject didn't sit so well because, hundreds of students talked about it, in another year, it may actually make you really stand out because almost no one broached that topic. And especially no one broached that topic and brought your unique spin to it. So I think the advice Jason gave is true. Have other people who are close to you, give and sort of chime in. Make sure it's clear. Make sure, obviously, this is a given that there are no grammar mistakes, spelling mistakes. It answers the question, and then submit that. And that's all you can do, and that's all you should be doing. If you're trying to play the game too much, you might end up actually hurting yourself because the game on the other side changes. slightly every single year.
And team, I think we're unfortunately at time. I can't believe it. The hour went by so quickly. My question for you all, I have two more questions. The first question is, are there other opportunities for students to take advantage of, like this, similar to today's conversation, to really help them learn more about Gates, more about Hispanic Scholarship Fund, and your friends and partners and stakeholders? If so, where can they find it? How can they stay informed? Thoughts?
Yeah, online. So fortunately, Paul shared the links in the chat, and visit us at hsf.net on our website. There's a wealth of resources there. In this digital age, that's the best way to connect. We have a message center. You can contact us to ask your questions, both at thegatescholarship.org and at the hsf.net, and you will be able to reach our team through either channel. To get to your questions as quickly as we can, and to really dig in and find more information about the resources we shared today.
And last question, team, do you all have any encouraging words that you would like to share with our audience today before we leave?
Sure. I'll share the pragmatic and then the idealistic. The pragmatic is plan. Planning is critical. Plan your time out well. Do your research. Strategize. Implement. The pragmatic, which is key. The idealistic is this process should be motivational to you. This process should energize you. This process should empower you. You are intelligent. You have already accomplished exceptional things, even if you don't recognize it yourself, just by being a person who exists. It's part of the human condition. We all have done amazing things for our loved ones, for our community. You are unique. And if you haven't realized it yet, spend some time to think about that and what makes you unique, and let all that shine through. Let it shine through in different ways, but let it shine through. I think that's really important in this process. You should walk away from this process feeling empowered. And no matter what decisions come after you apply, don't let any organization or any college take that away from you. You are empowered. This is just one step, one small period of time in your life, and good things will continue to come your way if you continue to create that path for yourself.
Oh, that's wonderful, Daniel. And I would only add the philosophical. When I thought about college, I encourage you to think about the concept that the journey to 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Oftentimes, even in this presentation, it's a wealth of information. It seems like a lot. Sometimes it feels like too much, but it's really not when you tackle it one day at a time and you ask your questions and you set a plan and you develop a strategy. You can do it. I stand here as living testimony of that. I'm very fortunate to have been a first generation student, first in my family to go to college. Took a non-traditional route, went to a junior college and earned my bachelor's degree at Yale University. That did not happen overnight. It's not something that is very clear from the get-go. I would encourage you to go four-year university right away. But there's different ways to get there. It seems impossible. It seems difficult at times, but trust me, take it one step at a time, and I promise you, you will get there. I think you're muted, Brittany.
I was. Thank you. Team, we thank you so much for the audience. We have a wonderful team of 4 who is solely dedicated to informing and educating our audience. But I can't thank our partners like Hispanic Scholarship Fund and Gates Scholarship and the many counselors who are in the room today or shared this wonderful resource like College Block Party to the students. So I'm just so happy to, be in company with both of you all and please, please don't be a stranger to our community. Typically, we host a specific webinar regarding the Gates Scholarship later on in the year. So if you all were interested in learning more about the Gates Scholarship, hold tight, just update your College Greenlight email addresses, and we'll keep you all informed, okay? But thank you, Daniel, Jason, Paul, MVP in that chat room. Can't thank you all enough. We hope you all enjoy the rest of your night.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Now, to our audience, you guys have homework. Well, it's not homework, but if you all can please complete the feedback survey, we will be sharing your thoughts with the Hispanic Scholarship Fund and Gates crew. Also, there's an opportunity for you to enter any questions that were unanswered. You all can please write that in the survey and we'll be following up for those who did not get their questions answered. Again, on behalf of the College Greenlight team, we thank you all so much for your dedication to your education, to your illumination and enlightenment to pursue higher education. So whether that is a 2-year or 4-year, you all are taking those next steps and you are brave and you all deserve it. Please do not be a stranger to College Greenlight. If there's anything that you all need from us, we can be reached at info@collegegreenlight.com. Let us know if there are any content that would be helpful for you in your journey, because if it would be helpful for you, it will be helpful for all of us. And last words, in this day and age that we live in, we are surrounded by a lot of pain and anger and frustration. We truly, truly want you all to know that there's a community out there that recognizes you, recognizes your pain, recognizes your journey, and we are here as you walk through this journey. We want to definitely make sure that you all please stay safe and please be as vocal as possible and express your needs, express the things that matter to you, and truly live your life and your passions and the things that you truly believe in. We believe in you at College Greenlight and all your counselors who invited you here. With that being said, Black Lives Matter, and your life matters, your future matters. And thank you, everyone, so much. College Greenlight signing off to our next college block party. Hope you all enjoy, and please be safe. Take care.